Grandma, are you sick? My granddaughter asked at dinner, noticing my daughter-in-law putting something in my drink. Grandma, are you sick? Mary's question came as a barely audible whisper, so quiet that only I could hear it. My 7-year-old granddaughter had leaned in toward me during dinner, her lips practically grazing my ear. Her little hand trembled when she touched my arm. I glanced around the table. Robert, my son, was talking with Alice about work. Catherine, my daughter-in-law, was smiling as she poured more wine into the glasses. Everything seemed normal, just another family dinner. But Mary's eyes told me something completely different. There was fear in them, a fear no child her age should ever know. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I replied softly, stroking her cheek. "Why do you ask?" She swallowed hard and quickly looked toward her mother before turning her eyes back to me. She didn't say anything else, but her expression screamed everything. She had seen something that had scared her enough to risk asking me in the middle of dinner. My name is Audrey Rivers. I'm 68 years old, and in that moment, I understood that my life was in danger within my own family. But to understand how I reached that instant of silent terror, you need to know my story. It all began 3 years ago, when the death of my husband left me adrift in an ocean of loneliness. We had been together for 40 years. 40 years of waking up next to him, of shared coffee in the mornings, of hands entwined while watching television at night. When his heart stopped one early February morning, I felt like mine stopped too. The house where we had built our life became a mausoleum. Every room preserved his absence like a painful reminder. The armchair where he read the newspaper, the mug he used for his afternoon tea, his side of the bed that I couldn't bring myself to touch. The loneliness became physical, tangible, like a weight crushing my chest every time I took a breath. 6 months after he passed, Robert showed up at my door with a proposal. It was a March afternoon, and the rain was beating against the windows fiercely. My son came in shaking the water off his jacket, and behind him was Catherine, impeccable as always, with her umbrella perfectly closed and her practiced smile. "Mum, you can't keep living here alone," Robert said as he sat down on the sofa. "This house is too big for you. We built a small guest house in the back of our property. It's small, but it has everything you need. You'd be close to us, close to Mary." The mention of my granddaughter was the key that opened all my defenses. Mary was barely 4 years old then, and she was the only reason I still found meaning in getting out of bed every morning. Since she was born, we had forged a special bond. When I held her in my arms, the world regained its colours. "It would be wonderful to have you near, Audrey," Catherine added with that false sweetness I hadn't yet learned to decipher. "Mary misses you so much. She asks about you every single day." I accepted without giving it too much thought. I needed to escape that house full of ghosts. I needed to be close to my granddaughter. I needed to feel like part of a family again. I didn't know I was trading a prison of loneliness for a prison of humiliation and danger. The guest house was exactly as Robert had described it. Small. One room with a twin bed, a closet they had salvaged from some forgotten corner, a bathroom so narrow that I touched the walls when I turned around, and a kitchenette with a 2-burner stove and a miniature refrigerator. The windows faced the backyard, where Catherine cultivated white roses with an unsettling obsession. The first few months were tolerable. I kept busy organizing my few belongings, sewing curtains to bring life to that tiny space, arranging my books on a makeshift shelf made of wooden crates. I tried to convince myself that I had made the right decision. And then there was Mary. My granddaughter would visit me every afternoon after preschool. She came running down the stone path, her pigtails bouncing and her cheeks flushed. She brought crayon drawings, questions that seemed endless, and that laugh that filled my guest house with a light no lamp could match. "Grandma, why do clouds float?" she would ask me, sitting on the floor with her coloured papers. "Because they're light like your dreams, my love," I would reply, watching her draw with that intense concentration only children possess. Those moments with Mary were my oxygen, because the rest of the time, the reality was very different. Catherine began to reveal her true nature gradually, like someone who releases poison in drops so small the victim doesn't notice until it's too late. At first, it was comments during the family dinners, which I attended 3 times a week. "Audrey, that blouse makes you look wider, don't you notice? You should wear darker colours at your age," she would say, while passing me the salad with a perfect smile. Or when I offered to help wash the dishes. "Don't worry, Audrey. You contribute enough by living here rent-free. We'll take care of the rest." Each comment was a small but deep wound, and Robert remained blind. Or perhaps he simply chose not to see. He would look at his phone, change the subject, or get up to find something in the kitchen, just when Catherine was releasing her poisons, disguised as concern. I would smile, nod, and return to my guest house feeling more invisible each time. I kept telling myself that this was the price for not being alone, for having Mary close, for not being an even bigger burden on my son. I swallowed my pride and dignity night after night. 2 years passed like this. 2 years of subtle humiliations, of feeling like an intruder in my own family's life, of hearing conversations suddenly die when I entered a room. 2 years of noticing how Catherine kept Mary away from me with increasingly elaborate excuses. "Mary has homework." "Audrey, she can't waste time in your guest house. The girl needs to socialize with kids her age, not spend every afternoon with her grandmother." "That's enough, Mary. Grandma is tired. Let her rest." But my granddaughter resisted. Small and brave, she found ways to sneak into my space. She arrived with her storybooks hidden under her arm, with cookies she had saved in her pockets, with secrets she only entrusted to my ears. "Mum says I bother you," she would ask me. "Is that true, Grandma? I don't bother you?" "Never, my love," I assured her, hugging her with all the strength my broken heart could gather. "You are the only good thing I have left in this world." And it was the absolute truth. In that universe that had shrunk to a 323-square-foot guest house, Mary was my only reason to keep breathing. 6 months ago, everything worsened drastically. I overheard Catherine talking to Robert about sending me to a retirement home. It was night, and I had left my guest house to walk a bit in the garden when their voices reached me from the kitchen through the half-open window. "It's for her own good, Robert. At her age, she needs constant medical supervision. We can't give her that. And let's be honest, the guest house could be your office or a play space for Mary." My heart stopped when I heard those words. I stood paralyzed in the middle of the yard, hidden in the shadows of the rose bushes, my hands trembling and my breath caught in my throat. Robert was silent for a moment that felt eternal. Then I heard his voice, weak, defeated. "I don't know, Catherine. She's my mother. I can't just send her to a place like that. And what alternative do we have?" Catherine's voice rose in pitch, losing that false sweetness she always used with me. "She's taking up space. Mary is too attached to her. The girl needs to focus on her studies, on making friends, not spending every afternoon with an old lady who only fills her head with stories from the past." Old lady. That's what she called me, as if I were a piece of old furniture cluttering her perfect house. "Besides, think about the money we'd save," Catherine continued. "We wouldn't have to worry about her medical expenses, her food, her needs anymore. Retirement homes have everything included. And look, I found one that's not bad. It only costs $800 a month. It's a reasonable investment for our peace of mind." $800. That was the value of my existence to my daughter-in-law, a figure she considered reasonable to get rid of me. I returned to my guest house that night, feeling like something inside me had broken forever. I sat on the edge of my bed and cried in silence, covering my mouth with my hands so no one would hear. Not for myself. I had learned to live with the humiliation. I cried for Mary, because I knew that if they sent me away, she would lose the only secure connection that child had in her world. Because Catherine wasn't just cruel to me. Over time, I had begun to notice how she treated Mary. Never violent, never obvious. Her cruelty was more subtle, more damaging. She would ignore the drawings Mary proudly showed her. She sighed with annoyance when the girl asked questions. She constantly compared her to other children. Alexander's daughter already reads entire books. You can barely read a paragraph without making a mistake. Look how well the neighbor's child behaves. Always quiet, always obedient. Why can't you be like that? That dress looks awful on you, Mary. It makes you look fat. Put the other one on. I saw how every comment left an invisible mark on my granddaughter's soul, how her shoulders hunched a little more each day, how her laughter became less frequent. And I couldn't do anything except offer my guest house as a refuge, my arms as comfort, my words as a balm for her wounds. The following months were silent torture. Catherine began searching for retirement homes with a dedication that terrified me. She left brochures on the dining table where I could see them, brochures with photos of places that tried to look like homes, but were only prisons in disguise. Elderly people smiling forcedly in institutional dining rooms, shared rooms with strangers, recreational activities that seemed designed for preschool children. "Look at this one," Catherine would say, showing me the images with false enthusiasm. "It has beautiful gardens, and they play bingo every Friday. You'd love it." I only nodded, unable to find words to defend my right to exist. Robert avoided the topic. When Catherine brought out the brochures in his presence, he found excuses to leave the room. He had to check some work documents. He needed to make an urgent call. He had to check the car. Anything to avoid facing the reality of what they were planning to do to me. The only one who fought for me was Mary, my little 7-year-old warrior who didn't fully understand what was happening, but felt the injustice with every fiber of her being. "Why does Grandma have to leave?" I heard her ask Robert one afternoon. I was in my guest house, but the window was open, and their voices came clearly from the garden. "Those are adult things, sweetheart," Robert replied with that tired voice he used when he didn't want to explain something. "Grandma would be better off in a place where professionals take care of her." "But I take care of her, and she takes care of me," Mary insisted with her perfect child's logic. "I don't want her to go." "We'll talk about this when you're older," Robert cut off the conversation. And that was the end of it. How did all uncomfortable conversations end in that family? With silence and evasion. 3 months ago, something happened that changed the balance of power in that house. Catherine received an inheritance from a distant uncle. $50,000 that arrived like a gift from heaven for her, and like a death sentence for me. I heard her talking on the phone with a friend, bragging about the money with an excitement she rarely showed. "It's perfect, Julia. We can remodel the kitchen, replace the living room furniture, and finally do something with that horrible guest house. Once Audrey's in the home, we'll turn it into an office for Robert. Or even better, my own yoga space. I've always wanted a place like that." Her laughter echoed through the house, a laugh that pierced me like 1,000 needles. But that inheritance brought something more than just remodeling plans. It brought a change in Catherine. She became more anxious, more impatient. As if now that she had the money, she couldn't wait to get rid of me and start her new, perfect life without the bother of her mother-in-law. The family dinners became tenser. Catherine served my food with abrupt movements, practically throwing the plates in front of me. Her hurtful comments increased in frequency and venom. It's a shame that at your age you can't enjoy food like you used to. Audrey, everything bothers your stomach, right? Maybe the home has special menus for delicate stomachs. That cough of yours sounds worse and worse. You need medical attention that we can't provide. It would be irresponsible to keep you here. Mary, don't sit so close to your grandmother. Lately, she's had that terrible cough. We don't want you catching anything. Every word was another brick in the wall she was building between my granddaughter and me. And I felt powerless, watching it happen without being able to stop it. Then the aches began. 2 months ago, I started feeling unwell after dinners in the main house. Nausea that doubled me over. Dizziness that made me stumble back to my guest house. Stomach aches that kept me awake all night. At first, I thought it was my age, that my body was finally giving up. But then I noticed a pattern. I only felt sick after eating at Robert and Catherine's house. When I ate in my guest house, using my own food, I was perfectly fine. I tried to tell Robert once. It was a mistake. "Mom, you're not 20 anymore," he said, with that condescending patience he had been using with me lately. "It's normal for your digestive system to be more sensitive. Catherine cooks with butter and spices. Maybe that's too much for you now. That's another reason why a specialized place would be better." He didn't believe me, or he didn't want to believe me. And I was left with my suspicions, keeping them in my chest like dangerous secrets I couldn't share with anyone. Except with Mary. My granddaughter began to observe more. Her visits to my guest house became more urgent, as if she needed to constantly verify that I was still okay. She brought me water from her own bottle. She insisted I eat the cookies she hid for me. "Grandma, are you really okay?" she would ask me with those enormous eyes full of worry. "Yes, my love. I'm just old, and my body doesn't work like it used to," I lied to her, because I couldn't burden a 7-year-old with my fears. But Mary knew. Children always know when something is wrong. They have an instinct that adults lose over the years. And my granddaughter had inherited a special intuition, the same one her great-grandmother had passed down to me, who always said she could feel lies in the air. A month ago, Catherine announced during dinner that she had found the perfect retirement home for me. She said it naturally, like commenting on the weather or traffic. "It's a lovely place, Audrey. I visited it last week. It has gardens, activities, nurses available 24 hours a day. You'll love it. And the best part is they have immediate availability. You could move next week." Next week. As if she were talking about changing curtains or buying a new sofa, not about uprooting a 68-year-old woman from the only home and the only family she had left. "Catherine, I don't think this is the right time," Robert intervened weakly. "Maybe we should wait a little longer." "Wait for what, Robert?" Catherine's voice hardened like steel. "For your mother to get sicker? For Mary to get so attached that she suffers later when we have to separate them anyway? Don't be selfish. This is best for everyone." Mary dropped her fork. The sound of the metal hitting the plate echoed in the silence that followed. "I don't want Grandma to leave," Mary said in a trembling voice. Tears were starting to well up in her eyes. "She lives here. This is her home." "Mary, that's enough," Catherine cut in dryly. "The adults are talking. Finish your dinner and go to your room." "But, Mum," I said, "that's enough." Catherine's tone permitted no reply. Mary looked at me desperately, searching my eyes for some promise that everything would be okay. But I couldn't give her that promise, because for the first time in my life, I didn't know if it really would be okay. That night, after returning to my guest house, I heard a soft knocking on my door. It was Mary, in her pajamas, with her bunny slippers and her eyes red from crying so much. "Grandma, Don't go, she whispered as she threw herself into my arms. Please, don't leave me alone with her. Those last words pierced my heart. Don't leave me alone with her. Not with them, with her. My granddaughter was afraid of her own mother, and I had known it all this time, but I had refused to see it clearly. My love, come here. I sat her down on my bed and wiped her tears with my trembling hands. No matter what happens, I will always be with you. Even if I can't see you every day, you'll always be in my heart, and we'll find a way to see each other. I promise you. It's not the same, Mary sobbed, clinging to my blouse as if she wanted to merge with me. I can come here when I'm scared, when Mum yells, when everything's wrong. You make me feel safe. I froze. When Mum yells. Catherine was yelling at this child when no one else was around. Of course she was. A woman capable of psychologically torturing an elderly person would have no qualms about emotionally abusing her own daughter. Does your mum yell at you a lot? I asked gently, trying to keep my voice calm even though I was trembling with rage inside. Mary nodded against my chest. When Dad isn't here, she says I'm stupid, that I'm worthless, that I should be more like the other girls. And when I cry, she gets angrier. She says I'm a dramatic crybaby. That's why I come here, Grandma, because you make me feel like I'm not bad. That night, after taking Mary back to her room, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the darkness of my guest house, 1,000 thoughts running through my mind like knives. If I went to that home, Mary would be completely defenseless against Catherine. Robert was too weak or blind to protect her. And I would be sent away, helpless, knowing my granddaughter was suffering and being unable to do anything about it. That was the night I stopped being a silent victim and became a watchful woman. If Catherine wanted to play dirty, I needed to be prepared. I started paying closer attention to everything, to every gesture, every word, every look. And what I discovered horrified me. Catherine had started to tamper with my food. I had no concrete proof, but my body screamed it at me every time I ate something she had prepared. The symptoms were too specific, too convenient. Nausea right after dinners, dizziness that made me look frail and sick, stomach aches that Robert interpreted as signs that I needed more care than they could provide. I started eating less at family dinners. I moved the food on my plate, pretended to eat, but in reality, I only took tiny bites. And the symptoms diminished. They didn't completely disappear, because sometimes hunger overcame me, and I ended up eating more than I should, but I improved enough to confirm my suspicions. Catherine was slowly poisoning me, not to kill me, but to make me sick, to create the perfect narrative that I was too weak to live alone, too sick to stay in the guest house, that I needed constant medical attention that only a home could provide. It was brilliant in its malice, diabolically clever. Because if I accused her without proof, I would seem like a paranoid old lady, exactly the type of person who needs to be institutionalized. I was trapped in her perfect game, but I had something she didn't expect. I had Mary. My granddaughter had begun to watch her mother with the same intensity that I did. Children are like sponges. They absorb everything that happens around them, especially when it concerns the people they love. 2 weeks ago, Mary came to my guest house with an expression I had never seen on her face. It was a mixture of fear and determination. "Grandma, I have to tell you something," she whispered, looking behind her as if she feared someone had followed her. "But you have to promise me you won't say anything. Mom would get really mad if she knew I told you." "I promise you, my love. You can tell me anything." Mary took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I saw Mum putting something in your food, several times. When no one is looking, She takes a little bottle out of her purse and puts a few drops in your plate or your glass. I thought it was vitamins or something, but why would she do it secretly? And why only in your food? The world stopped for a moment. I felt as if someone had confirmed my worst nightmare. I wasn't crazy. It wasn't paranoia. Catherine really was poisoning me. And now I had a witness, a 7-year-old witness who had seen what the adults refused to see. What kind of little bottle? I asked, trying to keep calm for Mary. Small, like the ones with medicine. It's white and has clear liquid. She keeps it in her black purse, the one she always carries everywhere. I hugged Mary tightly, my mind working 1,000 miles a minute. Now I knew the truth. But knowing the truth and being able to do something about it were two completely different things. If I accused Catherine, she would deny everything. Robert would weakly defend me, but would end up believing his wife. And I would be sent to the home even faster, labelled as a delusional old lady who invented stories. No, I needed proof. I needed Catherine to expose herself in a way no one could deny. Mary, listen to me carefully, I said, holding her little face between my hands. What you saw is very important, but you can't tell anyone else. Not your dad, not your mum, not anyone. Do you understand? This stays between you and me. Are you in danger, Grandma? She asked, her eyes wide. No, my love, I'm fine. But I need you to trust me and keep watching. If you see your mum do that again, you tell me immediately, okay? Mary nodded solemnly. In that moment, she stopped being just a child. She became my ally, my eyes where I couldn't see, my protector as much as I was hers. The following days were a torture of waiting. Catherine had scheduled my move to the home for within 1 week. She had signed papers, paid deposits, arranged transportation. Everything was ready to permanently dispose of me. But there was a hitch in her plans. Alice, Catherine's mother, was coming to visit us 3 days before my scheduled move. Alice lived in a different city and rarely visited, but Catherine had insisted she come to say goodbye to me, to give the image of a united family making difficult decisions with love and respect. I knew Alice. She was a cold, calculating woman who had raised Catherine with the same lack of empathy that my daughter-in-law showed. They were cut from the same cloth. Alice treated me with the same condescension disguised as courtesy as her daughter. There was always a smile on her face and a veiled insult in her words. Audrey, dear, you look frailer every day. It's good that you're finally going to a place where they'll take care of you as you deserve. It must be difficult to feel so dependent at your age, but that's life, isn't it? We all end up being a burden on someone. Alice would arrive on a Thursday afternoon and stay until Saturday. Catherine had planned a special dinner for Friday, the last family dinner before my departure. She had invited some neighbours, bought expensive wine, and prepared an elaborate menu. She wanted everything to be perfect, for everyone to see what a loving family we were, what a mature and responsible decision we were making. She didn't know that dinner would be her downfall. I didn't know it yet either. But the universe has strange ways of serving justice, and sometimes it uses the most unexpected people as instruments of that justice. Thursday arrived, and Alice came with her expensive luggage and her perfume that cost more than my food for a month. She kissed the air near my cheeks, gave me a condescending pat on the shoulder, and proceeded to ignore me for the rest of the afternoon. Mary ignored her too, taking refuge in my guest house as soon as she could escape. My granddaughter couldn't stand her maternal grandmother. She said Alice had snake eyes, and she was right. Friday morning, while helping Catherine prepare a few things for dinner, I saw something that chilled my blood. Catherine took out her black purse, the same one Mary had described, and left it on the kitchen counter while she looked for something in the pantry. For a very brief instant, the purse was open, and I could see inside. There it was. A small, white bottle, exactly as Mary had described it. It was half hidden among Catherine's makeup and wallet, but I saw it. The physical confirmation of what my granddaughter had told me. My heart was pounding so hard I feared Catherine could hear it. I pretended to be focused on cutting vegetables as she returned, casually closed her purse, and hung it on the back of a chair. She acted so naturally, as if carrying poison in her purse were the most normal thing in the world. "Audrey, you can leave now," she said, without even looking at me. "I'll finish up here. Go rest. Tonight will be long, and I don't want you to look too tired in front of the guests." Of course not. I couldn't look tired. I needed to look sick, but not too sick. Just enough to justify my confinement in a home, but not so much as to raise suspicion. Catherine was walking a very fine line, and she knew it. I went back to my guest house with trembling legs. I sat on my bed and took a deep breath, trying to calm the panic that threatened to overwhelm me. Tonight would be crucial. Catherine would try something during dinner, I was sure. She wanted all the guests to see me unwell, to confirm with their own eyes that I needed more care than my family could provide. I had to be ready. I had to be smarter than her. Mary came running an hour before dinner. She burst into my guest house breathless, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright with urgency. "Grandma, I saw her again," she whispered, closing the door behind her. "Mum was in the kitchen preparing the drinks. She took that little bottle out of her purse and put something in a wine glass. Then she wrote your name on a little piece of paper and stuck it under the glass." So that was it. Catherine had marked my glass to ensure I drank exactly from the correct one. She couldn't risk anyone else drinking my wine. She needed only me to consume whatever she was putting in it. "Are you sure it was my name?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yes, Grandma. It said Audrey in big letters. I saw her write it and stick it on. It's under the glass, where no one else can see it without crouching down." I hugged Mary, my brave little spy. "You did so well to tell me, my love. Now listen carefully. Tonight during dinner, I want you to stay very close to me. And if you see me do anything strange, don't say anything. Just trust me. Can you do that?" Mary nodded with that seriousness only children can have when they feel something important depends on them. "I trust you, Grandma. I always trust you." Dinner was scheduled to begin at 7 o'clock. The guests started arriving at 6:30. There were the next-door neighbours, Charles and his wife Julia. There was Robert's boss from work with his partner. And of course there was Alice, presiding over the table as if she were the queen of that small kingdom of hypocrisy. I arrived exactly at 7 o'clock, dressed in my best blouse and a skirt I had carefully ironed. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted that when everything exploded, no one could say I looked like a messy, confused old lady. Catherine greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Audrey, you look great. Come, sit here." She directed me to my usual place at the table, the seat furthest from the kitchen, the corner where it was easy to forget I was there. The glasses were already set on the table. Red wine for everyone. And there was mine, at my designated spot, waiting for me like a perfectly prepared trap. From my angle, I couldn't see if it had the little paper underneath, but I trusted what Mary had told me. I sat down slowly, smiling at the guests who greeted me with that forced courtesy people use with the elderly. Mary slipped into the seat next to me, ignoring Catherine's gesture that tried to seat her further away. "I want to be with Grandma," my granddaughter insisted, with that childish stubbornness that in that moment was my salvation. Catherine pressed her lips together, but didn't argue. She couldn't make a scene in front of the guests, not when she was working so hard to project the image of a loving, sacrificial daughter-in-law. The conversation flowed with the typical artificiality of formal dinners. Charles talked about his new car. Julia commented on the flowers in the garden. Robert's boss made a bad joke about work that everyone laughed at out of courtesy. And I remained silent, watching, waiting for the right moment. Catherine served dinner. She had prepared an elaborate roast, fresh salads, and homemade bread. Everything looked beautiful, straight out of a magazine. She moved around the kitchen with grace, serving each guest with smiles and charming comments. The perfect hostess. "A toast," Robert announced when everyone had food on their plates. He stood up with his glass raised. "To my mother, Audrey, who has been with us these last 3 years, although she will soon embark on a new chapter in her life, she will always be a part of our family." The words were nice. The words always were. But I knew what they really meant. "Goodbye, Mum. We're discarding you, but we'll make it sound like it's for your own good." Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too, feeling the weight of the crystal in my trembling hand. Catherine was watching me from across the table. Her eyes gleamed with an anticipation she could barely hide. She was waiting for me to drink, waiting for the show she had so carefully orchestrated to begin. But I didn't drink. I brought the glass to my lips, but I didn't take a single sip. And I saw frustration briefly cross Catherine's face before she could hide it behind another fake smile. "Aren't you going to toast with us, Audrey?" Alice asked, with that saccharine voice she used when she wanted to subtly humiliate me. "It's your farewell dinner, after all." "Of course," I replied calmly. I was just savouring the moment. The dinner continued. Plates emptied, conversations multiplied, and the wine flowed. Everyone drank from their glasses except me. I pretended to bring mine to my lips from time to time, but I always found a way to distract myself before actually drinking. I would comment on something, ask for more bread, wipe my lips with my napkin. Mary watched me with those big, understanding eyes. She knew what I was doing, and I could see in her expression that she was also waiting for something, although she didn't know exactly what. Catherine was getting nervous. Every time she passed near me to serve more food or clear plates, she glanced at my still full glass. I could see her doing mental calculations, wondering if she had put enough in for it to work with just a few sips, or if she needed me to drink the whole glass. Alice noticed it too. "Audrey, you've barely touched your wine. Don't you like it? Catherine chose a special vintage for tonight." "It's delicious," I lied. "I'm just trying not to drink too much. You know, at my age, alcohol affects me more." "A little won't hurt you," Catherine insisted with a barely perceptible tension in her voice. "It's a special occasion." It was then that Mary acted. My brilliant little granddaughter who understood the game better than any adult at that table. "Grandma, are you sick?" she asked softly, leaning toward me. The words were for my ears only, but her tone of concern was real. She was asking me if Catherine had managed to put something else in, if I was in danger, if she should do something. I looked at my granddaughter and saw the fear in her eyes, the pure, unconditional love, the bravery of a small creature willing to face monsters to protect the one she loved. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. "Relax, sweetheart. I'm fine," I told her quietly, gently stroking her cheek. Then I slowly stood up, as if my knees were aching. "Excuse me, I need to go to the restroom for a moment." I moved away from the table with careful steps, carrying my wine glass with me. No one really noticed. Everyone was too engrossed in their conversations, in their own worlds. Except Catherine, whose eyes followed me like a hawk watching its prey. But I didn't go to the bathroom. I stopped in the hallway, hidden by the wall, separating the dining room from the kitchen. And I waited. I waited until I heard the conversations resume, until everyone's attention was back on dinner. Then I returned, but not directly to my seat. I walked behind Alice, who was distracted telling Julia a story about her latest trip to the coast. With a quick, silent movement that would surprise anyone who thought a 68-year-old woman couldn't be agile, I swapped my glass with Alice's. They were identical. The same wine, the same glass, the same amount. No one would notice the difference unless they knew one of them contained something more than just alcohol. I returned to my seat with my heart pounding like a war drum. Mary looked at me with wide eyes. She had seen what I did. My intelligent and observant granddaughter had seen everything. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but I gently shook my head. She understood and closed her mouth, but I could see her small hands clinging to the edge of the table. Now all that was left was to wait. The dinner continued as if nothing had happened. The guests kept eating, laughing, commenting on trivialities that seemed important at the moment, but would be forgotten the next day. Catherine served dessert, a chocolate cake she had bought at the most expensive bakery in town. $30 for a cake that no one really wanted, but everyone ate out of politeness. Alice drank from her glass with the naturalness of someone who suspected absolutely nothing. She took small sips between bites of food, delicately wiping the corners of her lips with her cloth napkin. She was an elegant woman. Alice. All her life she had cultivated that image of sophistication and class. She never imagined that tonight her own elegance would be her undoing. I watched the clock on the wall. 10 minutes had passed since Alice began drinking from the poisoned glass. Then 15. Then 20. My heart was beating faster and faster. How long would it take effect? What exactly had Catherine put in that drink? Catherine was looking at the clock, too. Then she looked at me, confused. I should be showing symptoms by now. I should be turning pale, complaining of dizziness, asking permission to leave. That was her plan. To make me feel sick in front of all the witnesses, so that when they took me to the home the next day, no one would question the decision. But I was perfectly fine. I calmly ate my dessert, smiled when someone spoke to me, and participated in conversations when necessary. And Catherine didn't understand what had gone wrong. 25 minutes. 30 minutes. It was then that Alice dropped her fork onto the plate with a clumsy movement. The sound of the metal hitting the porcelain was louder than normal. Everyone turned to look at her. "Are you okay, Mum?" Catherine asked, and there was something strange in her voice, a note of concern that sounded fake even to the guests who didn't know the truth. "Yes, Alice raised a hand to her forehead. Her skin had taken on a greyish tone. "I feel a little dizzy. It must be the heat." "We can open the windows," Robert offered, getting up quickly. Always so helpful with the small things, so useless with the things that truly mattered. "No, it's not necessary," Alice tried to smile, but the smile came out crooked. I need. She didn't finish the sentence. Her eyes rolled back, and her body slumped sideways. Charles, who was sitting next to her, barely managed to catch her before she fell to the floor. Chaos erupted instantly. Julia screamed. Robert ran toward his mother-in-law. His boss stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. And Catherine was paralyzed, her eyes fixed on her unconscious mother, with an expression of horror and confusion that would have been comical if the situation hadn't been so serious. "Call an ambulance!" Charles shouted as he tried to adjust Alice on the floor. "Quickly!" Robert took out his phone with trembling hands and dialed the emergency number. His voice came out choked as he explained the situation. 65-year-old woman. Sudden loss of consciousness. We need help immediately. I remained in my seat, observing the scene with a calmness that surprised even myself. Mary clung to my arm, her small fingers digging into my skin. I could feel her trembling. She was scared, but there was also something else in her eyes. Comprehension. My granddaughter understood what had just happened, even if she couldn't fully process it. Catherine finally reacted. She ran toward her mother, falling to her knees beside her. "Mom, Mom, can you hear me?" Her voice was high-pitched, desperate, but there was something more behind that desperation. There was panic, the panic of someone who knows exactly what caused this, but can't say it. "She's breathing," Charles reported, who had put his ear near Alice's mouth. "But her pulse is very fast." "What did she eat?" Julia asked, always practical in a crisis. "Is she allergic to something?" "No," Catherine replied, and her voice sounded strange, hollow. "She doesn't have allergies. I don't understand what happened. She was fine a moment ago." Robert returned from the phone. "The ambulance is on its way. They said it will take about 10 minutes. 10 minutes that felt like 10 hours. Alice remained unconscious on the dining room floor, surrounded by people who didn't know how to help her. Her breathing was irregular, her face was covered in sweat. Occasionally her body would shudder with small spasms that made everyone hold their breath. Catherine held her, rocking her body as if she were a small child. Tears were running down her face, but I didn't know if they were genuine or part of an act. Did she really love her mother, or was she just terrified because her plan had gone terribly wrong? It was Mary who broke the tense silence that had fallen over all of us. "It was meant for Grandma." The words burst from her mouth like an explosion, a high-pitched cry, full of rage and fear and truth. Everyone turned to look at her. My small granddaughter was standing next to me, her fists clenched and tears running down her flushed cheeks. "What did you say, Mary?" Robert's voice was barely a whisper. "I said it was meant for Grandma," Mary repeated, louder this time. She pointed an accusing finger at Catherine. "I saw Mum putting something in Grandma's drink. I saw it with my own eyes. But Grandma changed the glasses." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the street noises seemed to stop. No one moved. No one breathed. It was as if time itself had decided to freeze to process what had just been revealed. Catherine looked up from the floor. Her face was wax pale. "Mary, you don't know what you're saying. You're a child. You're confused." "I'm not confused," Mary shouted. I saw you take that little white bottle out of your purse and put drops in Grandma's glass. And you put a little paper with her name under the glass so you wouldn't get mixed up." Robert moved then. He went to the table to where Alice had been sitting. He crouched down and looked under the glass she had been using. When he straightened up, he had a small piece of paper in his hand. His fingers trembled as he opened it. "Audrey," he read aloud. "It says Audrey." The world collapsed at that instant. I could see how the truth hit Robert like a punch to the stomach. How his face cycled through a dozen emotions in seconds. Confusion, disbelief, horror, fury. "Catherine," his voice was dangerously low. "What is this?" I didn't." Catherine stood up, swaying. "It's not what it looks like. Mary is lying. She's just a child. She invents things. She invents little papers with my mother's name on them." Robert held up the paper as evidence. "She invents that your mother is unconscious on our floor after drinking from the glass that was marked for my mother." "There must be an explanation," Catherine tried, but her voice was breaking. Maybe someone else." "Your purse," Julia interrupted her. We all looked at her. She was standing next to the chair where Catherine had left her black purse. The girl said you took something out of your purse. What's in your purse, Catherine? That's private, Catherine replied. But it was already too late. Charles had moved toward the purse faster than she had. He grabbed it before Catherine could react and emptied it onto the table. The usual things fell out: wallet, keys, makeup, gum. And then, rolling among the lipsticks and coins, a small white bottle appeared. The same one Mary had described. The same one I had seen that morning. Robert picked it up with trembling hands. It had no label. It was anonymous, menacing in its simplicity. He opened it and smelled the contents. His expression hardened even more. What is this, Catherine? They're sleeping drops, she stammered. Just sleeping drops. Your mother wasn't sleeping well. I just wanted to help her rest. Help her rest by secretly poisoning her. Robert's voice rose in volume with every word, marking her glass to make sure only she drank this, in front of witnesses, so everyone would see how sick she was, and you could send her to the home without anyone questioning your decision. No, Catherine screamed. It wasn't poison. They were just sedatives. I just wanted her to calm down, to stop being so difficult. And there it was, the confession. Out of her own mouth, in a moment of panic and desperation. Robert's boss pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. No, Catherine pleaded. Please, no. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted things to be easier. But no one was listening to her anymore. Robert's boss was on the phone with the police, explaining the situation in a firm, professional voice. Charles held the white bottle up, as if it were evidence in a trial. Julia had wrapped her arms around Mary, shielding her from the scene unfolding in front of us, and I remained seated, watching my daughter-in-law's carefully constructed world crumble. I should have felt triumph. I should have felt satisfaction. But all I felt was a deep weariness and an immense sadness for my granddaughter, who had just witnessed the complete destruction of her family. The ambulance arrived first. 2 paramedics rushed in with a stretcher and medical equipment. They knelt beside Alice, checking her vital signs, asking her questions she couldn't answer because she was still unconscious. One of them found the bottle that Robert still held in his hand. Did she take this? The paramedic asked, carefully smelling the contents. Not exactly, Robert replied, his voice broken. My wife put it in a drink intended for my mother, but the glasses were switched and her mother drank it by mistake. The paramedic exchanged a meaningful look with his partner. We need to get her to the hospital immediately, and we need this bottle for analysis. Does anyone know exactly what it is? Sedatives, Catherine murmured from her corner. She had shrunk against the wall, hugging herself. They're just sedatives, clonazepam. I got the prescription months ago. I just wanted her to sleep better. How many drops did she put in the drink? The paramedic asked as they prepared Alice for transport. Catherine didn't answer. She just shook her head, tears running silently down her face. The paramedic sighed and turned to his partner. Prep the activated charcoal. We'll assume overdose until we get the analysis. Alice was loaded onto the stretcher. Her body looked frail, vulnerable, nothing like the arrogant woman who had walked into this house just a few hours earlier. Catherine tried to follow the paramedics to the ambulance, but Robert stopped her with a firm hand on her arm. You're staying here, he told her with a voice I had never heard before. It was cold, hard, without the slightest trace of the weak, compliant man I knew. The police are on their way, and you are going to explain to them exactly what you've been doing. Robert, please, Catherine pleaded. She's my mother. I need to go with her. Just like I needed to protect mine, Robert countered. Just like my daughter needed to feel safe in her own home. You stay here and face the consequences of what you did. The ambulance left with sirens wailing into the night. The guests stayed. None of them knew how to remove themselves from a situation like this. It was like being trapped in a play where the actors had forgotten their lines and no one knew how to end the scene. The police arrived 15 minutes later. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both with serious expressions that grew even graver when Robert explained the situation. They took meticulous notes, photographed Catherine's purse, collected the glass with the little paper that had my name on it, and spoke with everyone present. When it was my turn, I told them everything. I told them about the months of mysterious illness after dinners. I told them about the plans to send me to a home. I explained how Mary had warned me about what she had seen. I described the moment I switched the glasses, acting on survival instinct more than any deliberate plan. "Why didn't you report this sooner, Mrs. Rivers?" asked the officer, a woman in her 40s with eyes that had seen too much. "Because I had no proof," I replied simply. Who would have believed me? A 68-year-old woman accusing her daughter-in-law of slowly poisoning her. They would have thought I was senile, paranoid. They would have sent me to the home even faster. The officer nodded with understanding. She had seen cases like this before. I could see it in her eyes. Elderly people abused by their own families, trapped in situations where no one believed them, because society prefers to think that family is sacred, that these things don't happen in middle-class homes with well-kept gardens and elegant dinners. Then they spoke with Mary. My granddaughter, so small and so brave, told them everything she had seen. The officer took special notes, asking gentle questions designed for a child witness. Mary didn't hesitate. She didn't contradict herself. She remembered every detail with surprising clarity. The color of the bottle, the exact moment when she saw it. How many times had she witnessed her mother doing the same thing at previous dinners? 4 times, Mary said in a trembling but firm voice. I saw her do it 4 times before. I thought they were vitamins. But then Grandma got sick after dinner, and I started wondering if they weren't vitamins after all. Catherine was handcuffed in her own living room. She tried to resist, screaming that it was all a misunderstanding, that she never wanted to hurt anyone, that she was just trying to do what was best for the family. But her words sounded hollow even to herself. You have the right to remain silent, the officer began as he led her toward the door. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Robert collapsed onto the sofa when they took his wife away. He put his head in his hands and cried like I had never seen him cry, not even when his father died. They were deep, heartbreaking sobs, the crying of a man who had just discovered he had been living with a monster and hadn't noticed. The guests finally left, murmuring words of support that meant nothing. Charles and Julia offered to stay, but Robert gently declined their help. He needed to process this alone, he said. He needed to understand how he had reached this point. When the house fell silent, only Robert, Mary, and I remained. 3 people connected by blood and trauma, trying to make sense of the chaos that had consumed our lives. Robert looked up at me. His eyes were red, swollen, full of guilt and pain. Mum, I don't know what to say. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. I should have protected Mary. You couldn't have known, I told him gently, though a part of me was furious with him. Because there had been signs. He had been blind because it was easier than facing the truth. Catherine was good at hiding her true nature. But Mary saw it, Robert said, looking at his daughter who was curled up on the sofa, hugging a cushion. A 7-year-old girl saw what I couldn't see. Children see more than we think, I replied, because they don't have the layers of denial that we adults build. They see the truth because they haven't learned to ignore it for convenience yet. Robert got up and knelt in front of Mary. He took her small hands in his. "My love, you were so brave tonight. So, you saved your grandma, and you saved me from continuing to be blind." Mary looked at him with those big, wise eyes. "Mum is going to jail." "Probably so," Robert replied honestly. He wasn't going to lie to his daughter. There had already been enough lies in that family. What she did was very serious. She tried to hurt Grandma, and she hurt Grandma Alice. "Is Grandma Alice going to be okay?" Mary asked. "I don't know, sweetheart. The doctors are taking care of her. They'll do everything they can." Mary nodded, processing the information with that unique ability children have to accept things as they are. "And what's going to happen to us now?" That was the question we were all avoiding. What would happen now? The family structure we knew had completely collapsed. Catherine would probably go to prison. Robert would have to raise Mary alone. And me? Where did I fit into all of this? "Now we take care of each other," I said, because someone had to say something. "We are a family, a small and wounded family, but a family nonetheless." Robert looked at me with gratitude. "Mum, I don't know how to ask you this after everything that happened, but would you stay? Not in the guest house. In the house. With us. Mary needs you. I need you. We need to rebuild this together." It was a tempting offer, but it was also complicated. This house was full of painful memories now. Every corner held the ghost of Catherine's betrayal. The dining room where I was almost poisoned. The kitchen where she prepared her traps. The guest house where I had lived as a prisoner in my own family. "I need to think about it," I replied honestly. "I need time to process all this. And you need it too, Robert. You need time to decide what kind of life you want to build for yourself and for Mary." That night I stayed in the main house for the first time. I couldn't go back to the guest house. I slept in the guest room, in a bed that smelled of lavender and had clean sheets. Mary insisted on staying with me, sleeping curled up at my side like she did when she was a baby. "Are you scared, Grandma?" she whispered to me in the dark. "A little," I admitted. "And you?" "A little too, but less because you're here." I hugged her tighter, breathing in the scent of her fruit shampoo, feeling the beating of her small heart against my chest. This child had been through so much tonight. She had had to grow up years in a matter of hours. She had lost her mother, saved her grandmother, and broken her family to save it. "Mary, did you know what when you shouted the truth?" I asked her. She was silent for a long moment. "I knew Mum would get into trouble, but I couldn't let her keep hurting you. Grandma, you're the only person who makes me feel safe. If I lost you, I didn't know what I would do." Tears rolled down my cheeks in the darkness. "You'll never lose me, my love. Never." The following days were a whirlwind of investigations, statements, and difficult decisions. The police analysed the contents of the bottle that Catherine had been using. They weren't just simple sedatives, as she had claimed. It was a dangerous combination of clonazepam with other compounds that could cause liver and kidney damage with prolonged exposure. The detective estimated that if I had continued consuming those doses for a few more weeks, my health would have deteriorated irreversibly. "She wasn't trying to kill you immediately," the detective told me, a man in his 50s with grey at his temples and an expression that had seen too much human wickedness. "She was playing a longer, crueler game. She wanted you to get sick enough to justify institutionalization in a home, but not so sick as to raise immediate medical suspicion. It was diabolical in its simplicity, and it had almost worked." Alice spent 3 days in intensive care. The overdose had been severe, much worse than the doctors initially expected. Catherine had put double the drops in my glass that night. desperate because I hadn't shown the expected symptoms in the previous weeks. My habit of pretending to eat while actually just picking at my food had diluted the effect of the poison, frustrating her plans. When Alice finally woke up, the first thing she asked was what had happened. Robert went to the hospital to explain everything to her. He returned pale and trembling, telling me that his mother-in-law had broken down crying when she understood that her own daughter had tried to poison her mother-in-law and that she had been poisoned by mistake. She says she always knew Catherine had a dark side, Robert told me while we drank coffee in the kitchen, but she never imagined how far she could go. She asked me if I could forgive her for raising someone capable of doing this. "It's not Alice's fault," I replied, though I perfectly remembered the coldness with which she had treated me for years. Catherine made her own choices. Alice was just another victim. The trial moved quickly. Catherine, faced with overwhelming evidence and the testimony of multiple witnesses, including her own daughter, accepted a plea bargain. She pleaded guilty to attempted poisoning, elder abuse, and endangering a minor. The sentence was 8 years in prison. I was in the courtroom the day the sentence was read. Catherine looked at me from her place next to her defense lawyer. Her eyes, once so full of contempt toward me, now only showed emptiness. I wondered if she felt remorse or was simply sorry for having been caught. "Do you have anything to say to the victim?" the judge asked. Catherine slowly stood up. She looked directly at me. "Audrey, I'm sorry. I know it sounds empty. I know it doesn't change anything. But I want you to know that I never meant to go that far. At first, it was just small doses to make you feel a little sick, to ease the transition to the home. But then it became something more, and I lost control." Her words didn't give me the closure I might have hoped for, because even in her apology, she was justifying her actions. Even now, she couldn't fully accept the monstrosity of what she had done. "I don't accept your apology," I told her with a firm voice. "Not because I can't forgive, but because your apologies aren't directed at the right person. You should be apologizing to your daughter. Mary is the one who lost the most in all of this. She lost her mother because you chose hate over love." Catherine lowered her head. She didn't say anything else. She was led out of the room in handcuffs, and I remained seated, feeling the weight of everything I had lost and everything I had gained. Robert and I had long, difficult conversations about the future. He was devastated, trying to reconcile the woman he had married with the monster she had turned out to be. He confessed that there were signs he chose to ignore. The way Catherine talked about the elderly as if they were a nuisance. Her lack of empathy toward anyone she considered weak. Her cruel comments disguised as jokes. "I loved her," he told me one night as we washed dishes together. Or at least I loved the idea of her. The beautiful, confident woman who made me feel successful. But I never truly knew who she was, and that terrifies me. What does it say about me that I married someone capable of this? "It says you were human," I replied. "That you made the same mistake millions of people make. You saw what you wanted to see. And Catherine was an expert at showing only what was convenient. But Mary saw it," Robert insisted. "My 7-year-old daughter saw the truth that I couldn't see, because Mary wasn't in love. She didn't have the emotions that cloud judgment, and because Catherine never bothered to hide her true nature from a child. Abusers are often careless as with those they consider powerless." Robert sold the house 3 months after the trial. We couldn't keep living there. Every corner held ghosts. The dining room where I almost lost my life. The kitchen where Catherine prepared her poisons. Even the garden with its white roses now seemed stained with guilt. We bought a smaller house in a different neighborhood, a new place without history, without painful memories. It had 3 bedrooms, one for Robert, one for Mary, and one for me. Not a detached guest house where I could be forgotten, but a bedroom in the heart of the house, next to my granddaughter's room. Mary had to start therapy. The child psychologist explained to us that witnessing what she witnessed could leave her with lifelong scars if not properly processed. But she also said that Mary had something uncommon for her age: emotional resilience built on a foundation of unconditional love. "Your granddaughter knows she is loved," the doctor told me after one of the sessions. "That love from you toward her is what kept her strong when everything else was collapsing. You saved her life as much as she saved yours." The therapy sessions were difficult for Mary at first. She had nightmares where her mother came back and finished what she had started. She would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, and I would rush to her room. I would hold her until the trembling stopped. I would sing the lullabies I had sung to her when she was a baby. "Why did Mom hate me?" she asked me one night after a particularly bad nightmare. "Your mom didn't hate you, my love," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "Your mum was sick. She had something broken inside her that she didn't know how to fix. And when people are broken inside, sometimes they hurt those closest to them." "Am I broken too?" Mary asked in a small voice. "Is that why I cry so much?" "No, sweetie. Crying doesn't mean you're broken. Crying means you are human. It means you feel things deeply. And that's a gift, not a weakness." Robert also started therapy. He needed to process his guilt, his shame for not having protected his mother and his daughter. He needed to learn to forgive himself for having been blind. The process was slow and painful, but little by little I saw my son begin to find strength where before there was only weakness. He became more present with Mary. He stopped working unnecessary overtime. He cooked dinners for the three of us, trying to create new family traditions that weren't stained by the past. He wasn't a great cook. He burned the rice and oversalted the vegetables, but the effort was what counted. "Dad, this tastes weird," Mary told him with brutal honesty. "I know, sweetheart, but it's made with love," Robert replied with a sad smile. "Love doesn't always taste good, but it nourishes you anyway." Alice recovered physically, although the doctors warned that the damage to her liver would be permanent. She would require lifelong medication and regular checkups. She sold her house in the city and moved to an apartment closer to us. She wanted to be close to her granddaughter, she said. She wanted to try to repair the damage her emotional absence might have caused. Our relationship changed after all this. There was no more condescension in her words. There was no superiority in her gestures. Alice treated me now with a respect earned through shared trauma. We had both been victims of the same person. We had both survived against all odds. "Audrey, I want to thank you," Alice told me one day as we drank tea in my new kitchen. "If you hadn't switched those glasses, I never would have known what Catherine truly was. And you would be dead or institutionalized in a home, slowly wasting away while no one believed you." It wasn't bravery, I confessed. It was survival instinct. In that moment, I just knew I couldn't drink from that glass. "Even so," Alice insisted, "you saved your life and mine. And you gave Mary the opportunity to grow up in a home where she doesn't have to walk on eggshells all the time." She was right. Mary was flourishing in our new house. Without her mother's constant pressure, without the cruel comments, without the fear of doing something wrong, my granddaughter was discovering who she really was. She was brilliant, creative, compassionate. She drew constantly, filling sheet after sheet with images of happy families, of gardens full of flowers of every color except white. "I don't like white roses anymore," she explained to me when I asked her why all her drawings had red, yellow, and pink flowers. "They remind me of Mum, and the garden where she always was when I wanted to play," but she said I bothered her. Even that, the white roses, Catherine had used to create distance, to cultivate an image of perfections while emotionally neglecting her own daughter. School was a challenge. The other children had heard rumors. Their parents had seen the news. Mary became the girl whose mother tried to kill her grandmother. Some children were cruel, as children often are when they detect difference. Others were too curious, asking invasive questions that Mary didn't know how to answer. But Mary found her strength in those difficult moments. She learned to respond with dignity when the other children asked inappropriate things. She learned to move away from those who wanted to hurt her with their words. And she learned to value the few friends who accepted her for who she was, not for the scandal surrounding her last name. Robert and I worked together to give her stability. We established routines, breakfasts together every morning, family dinners every night. On weekends, we went to the park, the museum, the library, places where we could create new, happy memories to replace the old, painful ones. I started cooking again. The kitchen became my sanctuary, the place where I could process everything I had lived through while my hands worked to create something nourishing and comforting. I made Mary's favorite cookies, the same ones I used to bake when she came to my guest house seeking refuge. I prepared the stews that Robert loved as a child. I cooked with love, something Catherine had never done. "Grandma, can you teach me how to make cookies?" Mary asked me one Saturday afternoon. She had flour on her nose and a huge smile on her face. "Of course, my love. Come here." We spent the afternoon measuring ingredients, mixing dough, and cutting shapes with molds. Mary laughed when the first batch came out a little burned. Robert appeared in the kitchen, drawn by the smell, and ended up stealing warm cookies directly from the tray, burning his fingers and making exaggerated faces that made us laugh until our stomachs hurt. Those were the moments that mattered, the small, ordinary moments that build a life. Not the grand dramas or tragedies, but the afternoons making cookies, the nights watching movies cuddled on the sofa, the slow Sunday mornings where no one was in a hurry to go anywhere. 6 months passed, then a year. The sharp pain turned into a dull ache that we learned to carry. Mary's nightmares became less frequent. Robert stopped waking up in the middle of the night, wondering how he could have been so blind. I stopped flinching every time someone served me a drink. Catherine wrote us letters from prison. At first, Robert threw them away without opening them. He didn't want to know anything about her. But after a year, his therapist suggested that perhaps reading them might help him close that chapter. The letters were strange. Some seemed genuinely remorseful. Others sounded as if Catherine were still trying to justify her actions. She talked about her difficult childhood, the pressure she always felt to be perfect, how my presence in her house had made her feel inadequate. "Do you see this, Mum?" Robert showed me one of the letters. "Even now she's trying to blame you, as if you forced her to poison you." "Let her," I told him. "Catherine is never going to fully accept what she did. Some people can't live with that kind of guilt, so they build narratives where they are the victims." Robert responded just once. A short letter explaining that Mary was fine, that she was recovering, that she had a good life now. He didn't mention forgiveness. He didn't mention the possibility of visits. He just gave her the closure of knowing her daughter was safe and loved. Mary never asked about her mother. It was as if she had closed that door in her heart and decided not to open it again. When the other children asked where her mother was, she simply said, "I don't have a mum, but I have my grandma and my dad, and that's enough." And it was enough. We were an unconventional family, broken and patched up, but we were strong in our shared fragility. We took care of each other in ways that perfect families never need to learn. Alice became a regular presence in our lives. She came for dinner on Sundays. She brought desserts from the expensive bakery she liked so much. She played board games with Mary, sometimes losing on purpose just to see her granddaughter smile. She helped me in the kitchen, And in those moments of shared work, we built a friendship we never would have had under other circumstances. You know what's ironic? Alice told me one Sunday as we dried dishes together. Catherine always complained that I was cold, that I was never affectionate with her. And she was right. I was a terrible mother. But instead of doing things differently with Mary, she was even worse. The cycle continues unless someone is strong enough to break it. Mary is going to break it, I assured her, because she knows love. She knows what it feels like to be valued and protected. When she has children someday, she will remember how we made her feel and will want to give them the same thing. Robert started dating someone after a year and a half, a woman named Alexandra who worked in his office. She was gentle, patient, and wasn't in a hurry to meet Mary. She understood that the situation was complicated, that there were wounds still healing. When we finally met her, Mary was cautious but polite. She observed Alexandra with those analytical eyes she had inherited from me, looking for signs of danger, trying to determine if this woman was safe. "What do you think of her?" I asked Mary after Alexandra left from our first dinner together. "I don't know yet," Mary replied honestly, "but she doesn't scare me. Mum always scared me, even when she smiled. Alexandra doesn't scare me." It was a start. And in time, Alexandra earned her place in our strange, patched-up family. She never tried to replace Catherine as Mary's mother. She never forced affection or closeness. She was simply there, constant and reliable, demonstrating with actions, more than with words, that she was safe. 2 years after that fateful dinner, we received news that Catherine had applied for an early parole hearing for good behavior. Robert received the notification and sat down with me at the kitchen table, the paper trembling in his hands. "What do we do?" he asked me. "We have the right to speak at the hearing, to give our victim impact statement." "What do you want to do?" I returned the question. Robert was silent for a long moment. "I don't know if I can see her. I don't know if I can be in the same room and keep my composure." "Then I'll go," I decided. "I will speak for all of us." The hearing was in a small, cold room at the state prison. Catherine walked in handcuffs, wearing the prison uniform. She looked thinner, older, with grey hairs she didn't have before. When she saw me sitting in the room, something crossed her face. Fear? Remorse? Resentment? I couldn't tell. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up and looked directly at my former daughter-in-law. "Catherine almost killed me," I began in a firm voice, "not just physically, but in every way that matters. She tried to steal my dignity, my autonomy, my place in my family. She tried to separate me from my granddaughter, the only light in my life during the darkest moments. And what's worse, she damaged her own daughter in ways that will likely take us years to fully comprehend." I paused, taking a deep breath. But I didn't come here to talk about hate. I came to talk about consequences. Catherine's actions had devastating consequences. And those consequences don't disappear just because 2 years have passed. Mary still has nightmares. Robert still wakes up wondering how he didn't see it. And I still hesitate every time someone offers me a drink. I looked at the parole board. If you release Catherine now, you would be sending a message that 2 years is enough punishment for almost murdering 2 people. That systematically attempting to poison a vulnerable elderly woman is not that serious. That traumatizing a 7-year-old girl does not require the full sentence time. I don't believe that's the message you want to send. The parole request was denied. Catherine would serve her full 8 years. When I left that room, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't exactly peace, but it was close. It was justice. It was confirmation that what had happened to me mattered, that the system recognized the severity of her crimes. The following months flowed more smoothly. Mary celebrated her 10th birthday with a party at our house. She invited 10 friends from school, and we filled the yard with bright-coloured decorations. Robert and Alexandra got married in a small, simple ceremony, just close family and a few friends. Mary was the maid of honour, wearing a lavender dress that she had chosen herself. I sat in the front row, watching my son exchange vows with a woman who loved him unconditionally, without hidden agendas. Alexandra had asked for my blessing before accepting Robert's proposal. We had coffee together, and she had told me with tears in her eyes, "I know I can never erase what Catherine did to you, but I promise I will spend every day trying to show you what family love is supposed to be like." And she kept her promise. Alexandra integrated into our broken family with grace and patience. She didn't try to change anything. She just added her own light to what we had already built. 3 years after that terrible dinner, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Mary walked into the kitchen where I was preparing tea. She was 11 years old now, taller, with her facial features beginning to define the young woman she would someday be. In her hands, she carried a folded sheet of paper. "Grandma, I made this for you," she said, handing me the paper shyly. I unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing, like the hundreds she had made for me over the years. But this one was different. It showed two figures holding hands, one tall and one small, walking through a garden full of flowers of every colour. At the top, in her careful handwriting, she had written, "My grandma saved me." Tears began to roll down my cheeks before I could stop them. I hugged Mary tightly, feeling her heart beating against mine, 2 generations united by love and survival. "You saved me too, my love," I whispered. "Your bravery saved me. Your voice saved me. Your love saved me." Mary pulled back a little to look at me. "Do you know what the psychologist told me last week?" "What did she tell you?" "That I'm strong because I had a good example. That I learned to be brave because I saw you be brave first." She smiled through her tears. "And do you know what I learned from you?" "What?" "That innocence is not the same as ignorance. That children see the truth more clearly than adults because they aren't afraid to look straight at it. You saw what no one else wanted to see, and you had the courage to say it out loud when it mattered. That's not just bravery, Mary. That's heroism." Mary blushed, but I could see the pride in her eyes. She had grown so much since that frightened little girl who whispered warnings during dinners. Now she was a confident young woman, capable of standing firm against injustice. That night, after Mary went to sleep, I sat in my room with a cup of tea in my hands. I looked at the drawing my granddaughter had given me, now framed and hanging on the wall next to dozens of others. A gallery of love expressed in crayons and markers, each one a testament to our unbreakable relationship. I thought about everything we had lost and everything we had gained. I had lost years of peace. I had lost my health for a while. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family. But I had gained something much more valuable. I had gained the truth. I had gained my voice. I had gained the knowledge that I was stronger than I ever imagined. And most importantly, I had gained a relationship with my granddaughter, built on foundations of absolute trust and unconditional love. Mary knew I would protect her with my life, and I knew she would do the same for me. Robert came into my room, as he usually did before going to sleep. "You're okay, Mum?" "I'm fine, son. Just thinking." "About what?" "About how much we've changed. About how something so terrible forced us to become the family we always should have been." Robert sat on the edge of my bed, just like he did when he was a child and had nightmares. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Mary hadn't seen what she saw, if she hadn't had the courage to tell you. "Don't think about the what-ifs," I advised him. "What matters is what actually happened. And what happened is that we survived. We all survived. Thanks to you, Robert said softly. Thanks to your intelligence in switching those glasses. Thanks to your strength during all those months of abuse. It wasn't just me, I insisted. It was Mary who warned me. It was your courage in facing the truth about Catherine. It was Alice who unknowingly took my place and exposed the plan. It was all of us working together. Robert hugged me before leaving. I love you, Mum, and I'm sorry I didn't protect you when I should have. It doesn't matter anymore, I told him honestly. What matters is that you protect me now, that you protect Mary now. That is enough. I stayed awake a little longer after Robert left, looking out the window toward the garden of our new house. There were no white roses here. Instead, Mary and I had planted sunflowers, daisies, and tulips of every colour. A cheerful garden that celebrated life instead of perfection. I thought about Catherine, still in prison, with 6 more years left to serve. I wondered if she had really changed, if she had used that time to reflect on her actions. But I quickly let those thoughts go. Catherine was no longer my responsibility. She no longer occupied space in my mind or my heart. Instead, I thought about the future, about seeing Mary graduate from high school, from college, about being present for her first loves, her first disappointments, her triumphs and failures, about being the grandmother she needed, not just now, but always. I thought about Robert and Alexandra, about the family they were building together on the ruins of the previous one, about the possibility of more grandchildren someday, more children to love and protect. And I thought about myself, about Audrey Rivers, who at 68 had discovered she was stronger than she ever imagined, that she had survived an attempted murder not with vengeance but with grace, that she had chosen healing over hate. I took the last sip of my tea, now cold, and smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would be another day to live, to love, to create new memories that would eclipse the old ones. I got up and walked to my window one last time. The full moon illuminated the garden, making the flowers gleam with silver light. I remembered the words I had thought that night, 3 years ago, when everything changed. I whispered those words to the wind coming through my open window. There is no poison that kills one who lives with a clean soul. And it was true. Catherine had tried to poison my body, but she could never touch my soul. Because my soul was protected by the love of my granddaughter, by the certainty that I had lived with integrity, by the peace that comes from knowing I did the right thing even when it was difficult. I got into bed that night without fear, without nightmares waiting for me. Only the quiet sleep of someone who has survived the storm and now can enjoy the sun that follows. And when I woke up the next morning to the aroma of coffee and the sound of Mary's laughter in the kitchen, I knew with absolute certainty that we had won. We hadn't just survived. We had triumphed. Because in the end, love always triumphs over hate. The truth always comes to light. And justice, though sometimes slow, always arrives. This was my story. Our story. A story of survival, of bravery, of family love stronger than any poison. A story worth telling, not as a warning, but as a testament that even in our darkest moments, there is always light and we know where to look for it. And I had found my light in the eyes of a brave little girl who refused to be silent when it mattered most.